Kahalau Yahawah Shem Yahawashi Bahashem Rakach Kadash. All praise, honor, and glory go to the Most High Yahawah in the name of His Son Yahawashi. And we lift up the name of Yahawah Bahashem Yahawashi above all things in the universe, heavens, and earth. You know, when you go back into the Old Testament, you read about the different kings, the prophets, the men of the Lord that, went through situations and went through reforming and went through falling and, returning back to the Lord. It gives us some perspective of how the Lord has always been with Yasharala Israel, you so-called African American, Native American, Latinos today, and how He continues to offer out a helping hand to those that hear this truth and they want, salvation. And you might ask, what is salvation? Well, salvation is being saved from the destruction that's to come. Because you got a lot of, wacky-tacky Christians that say they're saved now, but they don't even know what they're talking about. They're talking about a feeling and emotion that they get because they go into a building and give their tithes and hear, satanic music talking about JC and with the figure on the wall, and they go to work, and because they feel like they have prosperity in America, which is their prosperity is just an illusion, because the real prosperity, is with the elites of the nation of Edom. Even the richest person in each city that may live in a mansion, they won't have the wealth that these elites have been able to attain for centuries and centuries. But because you have a little prosperity and you're able to buy what you want to buy, and you celebrate these pagan holidays, and which all these things are coming to an end, as you see, as the king of Babylon, Nero, DJT, is setting up different measures to try to remove even his own people from being able to experience prosperity. And he wants it just to be the top echelon elites and then poor. He's setting up these 15-minute cities, and he's sending all immigrants of this country into detention centers, and he has a perfect plan, which is ultimately going to lead to the implementation of this microchip that's going to have to be put into your hand or into your head, so he can control, and the elites can finally have their perfect plan in play, where they are, playing the Most High. But you Israelites always have an opportunity to return over to your power. But there's steps that you got to take. Now, when you feel trouble coming on, who do you turn to? We're going to ring about King Asa right now, and how, the Spirit of the Lord came upon some prophets to speak to him and the people. And if you read about King Asa, for the most part, he was one of the righteous kings. He definitely was. He tore down a lot of the pagan idolatry and the high places. But in the end of his reign, he actually, he consulted a doctor about his foot, but for the most part of his reign, his early reign, he was a righteous king. And when you go over to the book of 2 Chronicles 15, we'll start in verse 1. We'll read down to 4, get some precepts. Probably on verse 4. It says, then the Spirit of Yahawah came upon Azariah, son of Obed, and he went out to meet King Asa as he was returning from the battle. So a prophet came up to the king, and that shows you that the prophets have more substantial power and influence, more than even the king, because we have kings now in the so-called Black and Hispanic Native American community, who have the prosperity, have all the money, But it's really the prophets are the ones that have the true influence, because they're preaching out prophecy and they're telling you, to get right with your power so that you can experience deliverance from the onslaught of destruction that's coming to Babylon, America. It says, Listen to me, Asa, he shouted. Listen, all you people of Yahawah and Benjamin. So he's speaking to the southern tribe here, because King Asa was the king of the southern tribe. But this also applies to the northern kingdom as well. It says Yahawah will stay with you as long as you stay with him. So the Lord is not one that shifts, sides. If you stay devoted and, in sincerity in your heart are following Yahweh Hashem Yahawashi in that name, not by the names given to us by the heathen, not to the names given to us by, the so-called white man, the nation of Edom, which is JC, or called on God. If you call on Yahweh Hashem Yahawashi, it says he will stay with you. It says Yahweh will stay with you as long as you stay with him. Whenever you seek him, you will find him. So whenever you seek him, you have to seek him out. You can't just say you with him and not be doing things to show that you are with him. You got to be studying. You got to be purifying yourself. You got to be trying to do the laws to the best of your ability, But more so, you got to have faith in his son. Faith in his son, Yahawashi Mashiach. That's the main thing he told us to have, and the commandment that we have, to do, to stay for the Lord to, provide his covering. And his covering just means that while everyone else is going through all the hardships and all the turmoils of this land, you're going to know through faith that you're going to be taken care of. And that faith is going to outweigh all the doubts, the worries, the concerns, the terrors you have in your mind, the dreams, the things you experience through your family, people turning your back on you, your job may cutting you off, losing your house, home, your bank account being attacked, whatever that may come for whoever situation those things pertain to. It says that he will not abandon you if you seek and find him. It says, but if you abandon those ways and you go back to the ways of the world, you start off one way and you go back into the ways of the time when you were living as a Gentile. It says he will abandon you. He will he will abandon you. And sometimes, that's what we need. We need for him to abandon us so that we can get back right in our minds. Meaning that, you might fall off a little bit. Your prayer life may not be as on point as you used to be. So then you start to experience more straits and challenges. And you feel like the Lord is not with you. You stop reading it. You stop reading and studying the way that you used to study. Then he shows you, what I'm saying, that, that was more important for you. So he allows you to go through some turmoil. You may not, may let yourself go and, attend a family event where it's abominations being, or a family holiday, the holidays of the world, because you're hungry or whatever. And then he shows you in something happening that you abandon his way. So all these things can happen, and his abandoning you shows you that you need him. It says, for a long time, Yasharallah was without the true power, without a priest to teach him, without the law. And that's was our people for so long, especially when we were in slavery. First, the northern tribe, when they came over here on boats, and they occupied the land of South America, North America, even up to Canada. But then the so-called white man came over here and put them in chains. Then he sent over the southern kingdom, you so-called African American, Haitians, Jamaicans, Caribbeans, brought them over here and put them in bondage. For that time period, we were pretty much without our power, because he was teaching us JC, and he pretty much ordered us to follow JC. He gave us a Bible that was not indicative to what and took out pieces that were purposely left out so that we could not find our true power. And he did these things on purpose. And so for that time period, because of our people continuously to turn our back and abandon the Lord had enough, and he had us go through that. But then as times kept moving on, with the rise of different figures that may not have had the full truth, but they started to build back more confidence in our people. From the northern tribe, the Native Americans, some you know uh, so-called Mexican uh, revolutions over here in California. Slaves rising up. You know, even though Marcus Garvey was going off. But just the rise of, realizing that we're not who we say who they say we were. And then from there, Frank Cherry's, the William Crawleys, and Commandment Keepers, and you know all these different understandings that we were the Israelites. First starting with Judah, and the southern tribe, but then it got to the point where the Lord, showed compassion and mercy on us too, and He rose up Elder Abba Bivens, and then from there the truth just started to flourish. You know, between 7 men who followed him on down to the house of David, King Mashah, and then to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone before they were known as Great Millstone. So now we're here to where we have the prophets, we have the men. It says, for a long time, Yasharallah was without the true power, without a priest to teach him, and without the law to instruct him. Verse 4 is the point I want to get to. It says, but whenever they were in trouble, and you got to really hold on to this. When you are in trouble, when you are struggling in your faith, when you're going off, when you're feeling what you're feeling inside, when the world seems like it's crashing in on you, when your family, your friends, everyone turns their back on you. When you see people looking like they're prospering and you're being left behind. When you feeling the pressures of life come upon you, and it's tempting you to try to and it's tempting you to want to do something about it in your own might. It says, but whenever they were in trouble and turned to Yahawah, you're supposed to turn to Yahawah. That's what He's there for. It's not a time to get prideful. It's not a time to say, hey, let me figure this out on myself. Because that's the trick. That's the trick the so-called white man tries to promote. That's why you got the Nike ads of just do it. All these different advertisements to try to get you to do it yourself. Or get yourself out of your own problems. Self-help books, all these different things are totally against what the scriptures say for you so-called African American, Native American, Latinos. When you are in trouble, you're supposed to turn to Yahawah. You're supposed to humbly return to your power. And that's the problem. People don't like to be humble. Our people do not like to be humble towards their power. What they want to do is try to figure it out themselves, or use the things of this world to try to get them out of the situation they're in. They feel more comfortable with their lovers, it talks about in the scriptures, which means the ways of the heathen and the so-called white man. They feel more comfortable with the creations that the Lord created, more than the Most High Yahawah. It said, but whenever they were in trouble and turned to Yahawah, the power of Yasharallah, and sought Him out, they found Him. So it does take a humbling process for you to do that. But once you allow yourself to do that, you find Him. But it takes that main thing that a lot of us of you so-called African American, Native American, Latinos don't possess. And I say us, I mean as a people. It's that faith in believing that, hey, if you do the things that these scriptures say, things will turn out in your favor. And ultimately, if you continue to obey and endure, you will be part of the hopeful elect and be delivered. But you got to have that vision in your mind, and He only places it in His elect. He only keeps the hopes of the elect continuously burning, like a fire. So that even though the wind blows and tries to, like you ever see a bonfire, you get a real swift wind that comes, and it seems like the fire's out, it goes out. But then all of a sudden, as the wind dies down, you see it picks back up, and it gets more stronger, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's the same way with your faith in Yahawah Shem Yahawashi. It's going to be tested, in a lot of different ways. It's going to be some times where you feel like, man, everything is against me, but it's meant to be that way so that he can show the world that faith is what really is the true power that you need in his son Yahawashi, in that name, not in the fake names, you know, to really overcome this world. Because no one of our, not a lot of our people believe they can overcome this world. I will say majority of our people do not believe they can overcome this world, you know, because they count on themselves and they count on the things of this world. And we go over to Deuteronomy 4:29. It says, "But from there you will seek Yahawah your power, and you will find him if you search after him with all your heart and with all your soul." So with all your mind, with everything that you have inside of you, you know, not just fall into like, hey, you know, I could do it later. You know, it's not that important right now. These are very serious times. You know, there's going to be different things that he created to help out people up in this land taken away. You know, so the things that you relied on that he put into play to help out, you know, the poor and the needy of this land, he's removing. He's allowing the government to, you know, the wise men of the government and the king of Babylon to remove these things from you, so that he can test his people, the Israelites, to see how much they want to, you know, seek him out. Let's go over to this version right here. That takes you to the same one. It's like it's taking you over Deuteronomy. Let's go to 4:30 and 31. Read the rest of that. It says, "When you are in tribulation and all these things come upon you in the latter days, you will return to Yahawah your power and obey his voice." And that's for his elect. That's what the elect will do. You know, they'll face the tribulation and they'll start to remember that they have a power, because they hear the prophets out here. They hear the message. You know, everyone's not in tune to it yet. Everyone's not really grasping it all completely. But the elect are waking up. There's new people waking up every day, and they will return to their power, and it may take some tribulation for them to do it. Verse 31 says of Deuteronomy 4, "For Yahawah your power is a merciful power." He's very powerful, but he's also merciful. And we can see that by the world being allowed to continuously be corrupt and wicked, but him not sending his son just yet. His mercy is for those to repent. It says he will not leave you, and it's only for the nation of Israel. It's not for the whole world. It's for you so-called African American, Native American Latinos, and speckled bird Israelites that look like other nations, but your spirit resonates to what's going on and what's, you know, what the scriptures are saying to you, and you want to repent as well. Because the other nations and the wicked of the nation of Edom, they don't want things to, you know, they don't want to change. What they want is things of this world. They want the world to change, and it's not going to change in their favor. It says he will not leave you or destroy you or forget the covenant with your fathers that he swore to them. So because he made this covenant and this pact with, you know, our forefathers, that alone allows us in this generation to, when we seek him, you know, we will find him. And it's a guarantee. But you got to do your part. Deuteronomy 4 again. So a lot of them just taking you over to Deuteronomy 4. Let's go to the NET. Let's see if it has any commentary. it says, and he allowed himself to be found by them. And you got to remember, when you seek him, it's not your efforts that actually is getting you to find him. He's allowing it. And he's only allowing those of his hopeful elect, those that he's chosen since the beginning of time, to receive this truth and find it well with them. So there's some precepts in this one as well. And the CSB, let's see. So this was going to be a quick lesson. I just came across that and I wanted to bring it out. It gives you, Deuteronomy 4:29, 30, and 31 as some precepts for that. And, ultimately, hopefully, someone finds this edifying, and if they feel like they're in trouble, they return back to their power. So hopefully it's edifying to someone out there with that. Just want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, by Hashem Yahawashi, by Hashem Rakakadash. Double honors to all the apostles, the elders, teachers, preachers, priests, bishops that came before me, taught me his truth through the videos, starting with the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. And Shalawam, peace be to you, to the holy elect, which I pray I'm in the number of. Until next time, Yahawah willing.